Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive on TGI Fridays. You know, those excerpts that you sent in about, all their troubles recently. Well, it turns out there's actually a lot more to the story than just like a restaurant closing. We're going to be talking about, changing tastes and some pretty fierce competition and even a little bit of Hollywood, glitz and glamour. So to help us really make sense of it all, we've got our expert here who's amazing at breaking down business trends and cultural shifts. They're really good at seeing the bigger picture. So get ready for some ha-ha moments. Now, I'm sure most of you have at least some memories of TGI Fridays, right? Maybe it's those potato skins or a birthday dinner back in the day. But did you know that it all started as a singles bar? Yeah, you see that right. So let's dive into what made TGI Fridays so iconic in the first place, and then we'll look at where things might have gone wrong, and ultimately we'll see what their story tells us about the restaurant industry and how tastes change over time. Our story begins way back in 1965 in Manhattan. There was this perfume salesman named Alan Stillman, and he kind of had a light bulb moment. Did you realize that most bars back then were pretty much just for men? But there were all these single women living in the city, especially models and flight attendants. And he thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a place that was brighter and more inviting and designed for both men and women to connect? So he took a leap of faith, borrowed some money from his mom, and turned this old bar into the first TGI Fridays. They had lots of plants and, that iconic red and white striped decor and boom, a total hit.
It's really interesting because Stillman was really tapping into this huge cultural shift that was happening. More women were entering the workforce and dating norms were changing. There was a real need for a space that felt different from those traditional, dimly lit male-dominated bars. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
TGI Fridays basically became the blueprint for what we now call the singles bar, or sometimes the fern bar. These places were known for their more casual atmosphere. They had all these plants and Tiffany lamps and things like that.
Ah, so that's where that name comes from, Fern Bar.
Exactly. It really did spark a national trend.
And it sounds like it took off like wildfire. The article mentions that Stillman was getting calls from all over the country, people wanting to open their own TGI Fridays. By 1970, they'd opened a second location in Memphis, and then just 2 years later, another one popped up in Dallas.
Yeah, but you know what they say about trends, right?
That they changed.
Yeah, they're fickle. In the mid-'70s, that whole singles bar craze was fading. And for TGI Fridays to survive, they really needed to adapt. This was a make-or-break moment for them, going from being the hottest new spot to trying to find a more lasting place in the market.
So what did they do? How did they adapt?
Well, they made a pretty big decision. They decided to shift gears from catering to singles to focusing on families. Out with the, exclusive Manhattan vibe and in with the suburban family crowd.
That's a pretty big change.
Yeah, and of course they needed a menu that would appeal to families too. That's where the legendary TGI Fridays potato skins came in.
Ah, the potato skins.
Yep.
A classic.
This move actually coincided with the boom of casual dining in the 70s and 80s. Chains like Applebee's and Chili's and Ruby Tuesday, they were popping up everywhere. They were catering to families who wanted a relaxed and affordable dining experience. The competition was really heating up.
So now they're facing a whole new set of challenges, right? I mean, how do you stand out when everyone's trying to do the same thing?
Exactly. They needed something to set them apart, something unique, something memorable. And that's where flair enters the picture.
You mean like in the movie Cocktail? All those bartenders flipping bottles and shaking things that was practically a show. Did TGI Fridays really invent that?
Well, not exactly invent, but they they definitely took it to a whole new level. It's funny to mention Cocktail because Tom Cruise actually trained with a TGI Fridays bartender to prepare for that role. And Alan Stillman even claims that the character was based on him.
Wow, that's a cool connection. And the article said that TGI Fridays went all in on this whole flair thing, right? Bartender championships, trying to get bartending into the Olympics, even a world record for the most people simultaneously doing cocktail flair. It's almost hard to believe.
Yeah, they really went for it. Initially, that flair was a stroke of genius. It was stylish and energetic, and it perfectly captured, the vibe of the 80s. It gave TGI Fridays a distinct personality, and it made them stand out in that sea of casual dining chains. But what's cool? In one decade can quickly become cheesy and outdated in the next. And that's kind of what happened to TGI Fridays.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like we were saying, trends are fickle.
Right.
And it can be tough to stay ahead of the curve.
So what happened next? Did they ditch the flair? Did they double down? We'll have to find it after the break.
It's easy to look back and judge, but running a business, especially in a fast-paced industry like restaurants, it's incredibly challenging. TGI Fridays was facing this constant stream of pressures, changing consumer preferences, new competitors popping up left and right, economic downturns. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot to juggle. So let's dig into some of the decisions that might have led to their decline. You mentioned this shift from singles to families. Was that a smart move? Did it create kind of an identity crisis for them?
It's a great question and a really crucial point in their story. Appealing to families made sense at the time, but it did blur their image a bit. What exactly was TGI Fridays? A romantic date night spot, a casual family dinner place, a hangout for drinks with friends. Trying to be everything to everyone can sometimes backfire. You risk becoming nothing special to anyone.
Right, they lost that clear sense of who they were and who they were for. And what about all that flair? Didn't that become a problem too?
It absolutely did. Trends, especially in pop culture, they have a short shelf life. What's cool and exciting one day can quickly become dated, even cringeworthy. Remember that scene in Office Space where they make fun of all the flair?
Oh, yeah.
TGI Fridays might have been a hit in the 80s, but by the late 90s and early 2000s, it probably felt a bit forced and out of touch.
Yeah, like they were trying too hard, so they toned it down, right? The article mentioned a big revamp in the early 2000s, trying to modernize their image.
Yeah, they did. But stripping away too much of their personality might have left them feeling generic. Think about it if you're choosing between casual dining restaurants. What makes you pick one over another? Food quality, price, atmosphere are all important, but there's also this emotional connection that brands try to create, and without a strong, distinct personality, it's hard to stand out.
Okay, so it's not just about the food, it's about the entire experience. You need that special something to draw people in and keep them coming back. But even if they had nailed their identity, wouldn't the changing market have been a huge hurdle? I mean, the rise of fast casual was a game changer, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And what made fast casual restaurants like Chipotle and Panda Express so threatening was their ability to offer value. Remember, TGI Fridays, with its focus on table service and a more complex menu, they were operating at a higher price point. And as consumers became more budget conscious, especially during tough economic times, those low prices at fast casual restaurants became even more appealing.
Right, so they were getting squeezed, losing ground to other casual dining restaurants, while this whole new category of competition was emerging.
Exactly. And this internal struggle to adapt was happening while the external environment was becoming increasingly challenging. The 2008 recession was a major blow to the entire restaurant industry, but TGI Fridays seems to have been particularly vulnerable.
They had just hit their peak number of locations right as the economy tanked. Talk about terrible timing.
It was a perfect storm. Consumers were cutting back on spending, especially on things like eating out. And casual dining, with its higher prices compared to fast food or cooking at home, it took a major hit.
It's like they were stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Exactly. They were facing competition from both ends, other casual dining chains, and this new wave of fast casual restaurants, all while dealing with an economic downturn.
And then to make matters even worse, the COVID-19 pandemic hit.
The pandemic was devastating for the entire restaurant industry, but especially for chains like TGI Fridays that were already struggling. Closures, restrictions, the shift to takeout and delivery, it forced everyone to adapt in ways they never imagined. The article even mentioned that TGI Fridays tried to merge with another company in 2020, but the deal fell through because of the pandemic.
Wow, it's like they couldn't catch a break. So we've got this whole web of factors that contributed to their decline. A muddled identity, clinging to trends that had lost their appeal, this explosion of competition, and then these massive economic shocks. It really paints a picture of how quickly things can change, even for a brand that was once so popular. But is this just a story of bad luck and bad timing? Or could TGI Fridays have done something differently to survive and thrive? I guess that's the million-dollar question. So we talked about all the challenges that TGI Fridays faced. That identity crisis and holding on to the flair for too long and the rise of fast casual. And then, of course, the recession and the pandemic. It does seem like a lot to overcome. But could they have done anything differently? Was there any way to change the ending to this story?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? It's always easier to look back and say, well, they should have done this or that, but let's try to put ourselves in their shoes for a second. Let's start with that identity crisis. They were trying to appeal to both singles and families. Maybe they could have chosen one path and really phoned it.
Yeah, like going all in on being that ultimate single hangout. Or becoming the go-to spot for family fun. Focus their energy instead of trying to be everything to everyone.
Exactly. Imagine if they had leaned into their singles bar roots, but made it more sophisticated, more grown up, less about the cheesy flair, think like craft cocktails, a cool ambiance, a place where adults could really connect.
Okay, I like that.
Or they could have embraced the family-friendly route, but taken it to the next level. Interactive games-themed menus, a place where kids would beg their parents to go.
So they could have either gone back to their roots and really elevated the concept, or fully committed to being the best at something new. It does make you wonder what might have happened. What about the flair? Did they have saved that?
It's possible. Instead of ditching it completely, they could have reimagined it. Take those bartender skills and create a truly amazing craft cocktail program. Or come up with some interactive experiences that engage diners in a fun, modern way.
So instead of just getting rid of it because it felt dated, they could have found a way to make it cool again, make it their own again. I get it, trends change, but you don't have to throw out everything.
Right. And let's not forget about all that competition. What if they had been even more innovative? Not just with their food, but with the whole dining experience.
I remember you mentioned that they were a bit pricey compared to fast casual. Maybe they could have created their own fast casual concept, like a TGI Fridays Express or something. Offer a limited menu with their most popular items, faster service, lower prices. Kind of beat the competition at their own game.
That's a really interesting idea. They could have been the disruptor instead of the disrupted.
It feels like there were so many paths they could have taken. It's almost like watching someone miss a turn on a road trip. And you just want to shout, hey, go back, you missed the exit.
Yeah, I know the feeling. But of course we can't forget about those external factors, the things they couldn't control. The recession and the pandemic were huge challenges for the entire industry.
True, but those kinds of events tend to hit businesses that are already struggling the hardest, like they were already on shaky ground and then the earthquake came.
That's a great analogy. It highlights a really important point. Even in the face of unexpected events, companies that are agile, innovative, and customer-focused, they're more likely to weather the storm. It's not about predicting the future. It's about being prepared to adapt to whatever comes your way.
So the story of TGI Fridays is more than just a business case study. It's a reminder that the world is constantly changing. And to survive, you have to change with it. What worked yesterday might not work today, and what works today might be obsolete tomorrow.
And it's not just for businesses. It's a lesson for all of us, no matter what we do. Stay curious, embrace change, don't be afraid to experiment, and never stop learning.
It's a great reminder that there's always something to be learned, even from a story about a struggling restaurant. So thanks for diving deep with us today. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little inspiring. As always, subscribe to our channel, like the video, and comment below. There are also some links in our description that you may find useful. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.